Welcome back to a collection of spaces for 2025. First episode of Series 2. This one is with upholsterers Ayesha and Steph from Roads2Joya, who are based in Peckham. At the start of last year, I was searching for a way to step away from the workshop for a day, find some inspiration and learn some new skills. That's when I discovered the upcoming upholstery workshop that Ayesha had planned, so I booked a spot and off I went. Since then, Ayesha has commissioned me for several fabrication jobs, including stool bases and chair frames. It's been such a rewarding experience, not only learning about the intricate processes behind upholstery, but also getting to know them both from the studio in Peckham over lots of cups of tea. In this episode, we dive into their journeys into upholstery, from their formal craft education to the techniques they've perfected working on everything from Georgian-era furniture to modern-day pieces. We talked about the process of collaborating with designers and architects, exploring how they transform a flat 2D drawing into a piece of furniture that's not only built to last our lifetimes, but can also be reupholstered by their future owners. Hope you enjoy this one.
So would you talk a little bit about where we are today, as in like geographically, and like how long you've kind of been in this space and kind of the evolution of it over that period of time, since you said 2011?
Yes,
Yeah.
so I begun Roads2Joya, which is now me, Ayesha and Steph, in actually 2011, out of my mum and dad's living room, and worked there for a year before they got sick of it and kicked me out.
Yeah.
Not physically, just workshop wise. It wasn't
Just
that
pushing you
dramatic.
slowly
Yeah,
towards the door.
exactly. And I was looking for workshop spaces. I went to uni in South London. I've lived in Peckham for a really long time, and Bussey Building seemed like a really good place to come and have a look. Back then, Bussey Building was a much more organic space than it is now. So the corridor that we're now in was very makeshift, kind of people doing various things, and it seemed just like a really good creative environment for makers, which is why I wanted to be located here. They didn't have any space, so I was shown the janitor's cupboard, which literally was a janitor's cupboard.
Was that in this part of the building?
It was at the front corridor of the building. So it was by the broken lift, where now there's a window, there used to be a door.
Okay.
And it was a really small space, probably in terms of where we are now, about a quarter of the size. So you could fit comfortably a sofa in and work around it. You could possibly get sort of 2 chairs in at a time and work around them, but it was a small space. You know, I didn't have a huge amount of money to spend on rent, setting up a business, but it was a really great environment to be in. And then as the business kind of grew, I changed workshops from that space to an internal space, which is on the other side of the corridor where we're currently located, and that was unit DGF at that point. Now I think it's they've changed the numbers. It doesn't really matter. I don't know. They did a lot of things. They basically kicked me out of that space and back into the janitor's cupboard because they then wanted to homogenize the spaces internally and create better working environment. I mean, they're much safer than they were. Yeah. Actual mezzanines. Yeah. Actual doors. Lovely.
I remember going into that studio in the building next door, and it just felt like if there was ever a fire here.
Oh yeah, we lived in
a
tinderbox.
Yeah, like 2.4 metre plasterboard, then just ceiling.
Yeah, totally.
Like you just
which
hear
is kind
everyone.
of what was like the beauty of it.
But I don't know if it's still like that now, isn't it?
No,
is it not?
So
okay.
They literally, rightly so, went through the whole building one at a time and made it fire safe because I think they weren't meeting any standards. No. Where we are now used to be just one huge corridor, and at the end was a framer. Okay. And Simon had most of the space because they didn't know what to do with the middle because they just couldn't figure out how to cut it up. So they spent a long time making spaces. Yeah. And then basically Steph and I have hopscotched through all the spaces, and now we are in DGD.
This is the best one so far, the best iteration.
Yes, but I hate the floor. Sorry.
I thought you were going to say the pole.
And I don't like the pole. Sorry, Steph, what do you think?
Yeah.
I like this space. I think it's the most practical of spaces that we've had in terms of the ceiling height and not hitting your head. And then, the layout of the floor. I did also like that front one. That was nice.
I
But
liked the front one.
it was a bit more disruption because people would come in asking for directions.
Yeah.
Or the toilet.
Or the toilet, and you felt yourself being like information
Direction.
desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you come here, Steph? How long ago was
I
that?
always forget my dates. I think it was 2022 or
Okay.
one.
Kind of recently.
No, it was actually 2019 where you first started
yeah.
working, but it
Okay.
wasn't like formally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you doing
Before.
something before that?
Before that, I was a receptionist, and I was studying upholstery one day a
Okay.
week at Shoreditch Design Rooms.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I met Ayesha.
Okay.
And
Nice.
so Ayesha was my teacher in
Yeah.
second year, and
We hit it
never
off.
looked back.
Yeah.
Took all the students with me. You know? Yeah, Steph and I met. I mean, we're also friends,
Uh-huh.
but it was nice to sort of be able to grow the business through the organic process of training people.
Yeah.
And Steph has a great passion for upholstery, which was evident in the work, and an amazing workmanship, which
Mhm.
obviously I wanted to use to hone the skills of Roads2Joya.
Yeah.
And not many people that I was teaching actually wanted to be upholsterers, where you always wanted to be an upholsterer, you know? Yeah.
Is that just because it was like one day a week, so people could like they're like dipping into it? It's not like a full-time course.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's full time in the.
In some,
It works-
Some people can do it full-time.
Yeah, I mean, it works around the basis that people have jobs.
Mhm.
So it was never 5 days a week, but if you wanted to, the coursework and everything, you could end up spending a huge amount of time. Without sounding terrible, a lot of them were bored housewives. Sorry,
Yeah.
that sounds
Yeah.
terrible. So they didn't really, you know, it was
was a
always
hobby.
yeah.
Like a side thing.
Yeah, and always a thing of I want to learn a new skill
Mhm.
as opposed to I want a new career.
Yeah.
And there were a few people who literally did want it as a new career, and
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
took most of them on as my brigade,
Yeah.
which was kind of
That's snagging people.
yeah, totally. It was
Nice.
great. It was a
That's
good
nice.
place to find some talented people who actually wanted to do this job.
Yeah. So did you get to a point with the job you were doing before and you were like, right, I just want to change into like doing something else?
Yeah, so lockdown meant that I was working from home, and I was thinking, okay, I want to launch at some point and make upholstery my full-time career.
Yeah.
And then because we're working from home, I was able to like just do little side projects.
Yeah.
And then I went to a local upholsterer to see if they had any opportunity. Or I can't remember if that's what happened, or if Charlie.
Charlie came to me, so you were working
recommended.
with me.
Yeah.
I didn't have as much going because lockdowns were happening, and
Yeah.
so Charlie came to me, who was another teacher at the school, the upholstery school, and she wanted to know if anyone was around who was talented, and I said Steph was looking for more work days than I could provide,
Yeah.
and so I put you guys in touch with each other,
And
that was good
Yeah.
and bad, I feel.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Well, as in she left me
Yeah,
for
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
else, which was bad for me, but good for Steph.
Yeah.
I was there, I think, just about 6 months, 2 days a week.
Okay.
And then I could do that alongside my reception job.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I'm going to make the leap. And then went freelance, worked for Charlie, and then also an artist. And they were like a embroidered leather.
Okay.
And they wanted to have it all upholstered onto like boards, because they would be almost like wall mural type pieces. And they had some big projects, so I worked for them for a few months. And then Ayesha had this opportunity here, so I then jumped ship and came full-time for Ayesha.
Nice. So had you done any upholstery before you kind of started the course, or you just
No,
like, this
yeah,
is something I'm interested
Just
in doing?
Googling
Yeah,
on my
YouTubing.
lunch break,
Yeah.
like, oh, what courses are out there? And it was like wallpaper design
Okay.
or different things. But I knew I wanted to do something to do with interiors.
Yeah.
And then I saw that Shoreditch Design Rooms had the 1 year course, and then I was like, well, if I like it for 1 year, I can like do it and then continue, because it's a full to do the full years. Oh, I can't talk. It's because I know I'm recorded. It's a 3-year full course,
Mhm.
and then you get the diploma at the end.
Yeah.
And
So you went through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do you
came
enjoy? Did you enjoy like learning in that way compared to just like learning yourself?
out. Yeah,
Things that
definitely.
like pushed you a bit into
Yeah,
things.
I don't think I would have been able to learn
Yeah.
this myself. Like,
This
yeah,
is a broad
I think
depth,
this is,
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like each frame that you get, there will be similar principles, but yeah, it would have been a real head scratch without like the foundation.
Nice.
The course is run and based and sort of certified by one of the governing bodies of upholstery. So there's two. There's the Worshipful Council of Upholders, I think they're called, and then there's the AMUSF, which is the Association of Master Upholsterers and Soft Furnishers, and they are the people who've put the course together.
Okay.
So basically, what they're trying to do, and I think the reason that Steph and I both took the same course, I just did mine much before Steph.
Yeah.
Is create a gold standard to what people need to know.
Okay.
So, upholstery within England and in heritage sense has been around since sort of the 1500s. And it needs to be trained in a certain way that allows you to understand the traditional skills. So hand building, using natural materials like coconut fibre, animal hair, the stitching techniques, and as well as all of the modern techniques that we use. So that's something that I feel even if you wanted to learn it by yourself, you probably wouldn't quite understand the technique.
I know. Yeah. You're like, why am I going to bother going back 200 years?
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
Well, also those skills are just something that you could record it, but you need to understand, because there's so many layers of depth to the traditional skills, which are beautiful and still create pieces. Georgian pieces still stand the test of time now, and they're made in the 1750s kind of thing. So they are completely worthy of having the time and effort spent on them. But you try and YouTube that. It's just not something that you can watch on a screen, and like you have to get your hands in, and it's almost one of those things that the tactile nature of it needs to be passed down, which is why I think the credibility of the course is like you can learn how to do modern upholstery, you can learn how to do traditional, but understanding the concepts in modern is something you could probably guide yourself with at home. There's some foundations, whereas understanding the concepts of traditional, which I think is where a lot of people's passion suddenly kind of ignites,
Yeah.
is its own thing.
Yeah.
We had like a chaise in a couple of months ago, and when you like prise open and take off the layers over the years, and you can see it's just like an art, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every
It's thoughtful.
little bit of precision.
Yeah. And you kind of even see, I guess, if someone else has done some work on it in
Yeah.
that 150-year period.
Yeah,
And then you're also like, someone else is going to do something in the future, so I really want to do this,
totally.
obviously, like really well. It's like really good.
It's also one of the main things, right? Like, I think we joke about it a lot, but when we start to strip furniture, you can see people who love what they do, and you can see people who literally just don't care
Yeah.
because of the way they use a staple gun.
Yeah.
You can see the like rapid fire
Yeah,
sideways stapler who sends like 100 in a row,
Yeah.
and the person who's thinking about tension and knows that if
Doing it,
they
like, evenly.
yeah,
so,
if they spread it evenly, or if they spread their tacks evenly, you actually get a much nicer finish. So the levels of competence but also care comes through, and it's a historical journey, right? Like Steph was saying, when you start to peel something away, it's like, especially with that chaise, you could see the original Georgian bit, and then suddenly you could see where a Victorian upholsterer had come in, put their new techniques, which are now old techniques, so their contemporary views, into this piece that then we came in as people in the 2020s and went, well, do we restore it to Georgian, or do we keep the acknowledgement of the provenance of the Victorian? What do you do?
Yeah.
And you can do anything, right?
Yeah.
But you don't put foam in.
Loads of spray glue. Just
Exactly.
Spray glue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you could also see where someone had done that, and then because it was a piece of antiquity that was worth saving, the antiques dealer had ripped all of that off and kind of taken it back. So it's an interest, like, you become a bit of a, like, archaeologist, right? Like a bit of a history nerd.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes you're like, do we go all the way back to just the frame, or do you kind of keep those original bits, and like where do you kind of stop?
Yeah.
Kind of with that. I'm trying to think where to kind of go next. So I came and met you.
Yeah.
I guess I can.
And we know you, Pete.
Yeah. So I came just nearly a year ago to do like the workshop here with you guys, and even like you talking about putting all the staples in, and maybe we were kind of talking about this the other day. Like, I guess I look at something, I'm like, I want to just kind of get to the finish point. I guess even just doing that small project, I made what I call a pummel horse, but we also named it a corn dog.
Yeah, it's a cool piece.
I kind of made like the frame of the bench that I wanted to make, but I made it the size of what I thought it was going to finally be. But then obviously you add 100 mil of foam and all the fabric kind of over the top of it, so it's slightly oversized for what it kind of is. But yeah, the process of like doing and undoing, I guess maybe in woodwork I don't really do that so much. I don't know.
I guess you
I'm trying to find like
stuff,
I guess it was just kind of the equivalent of it. But yeah, putting staples in and then bringing the tension, then doing the covers and taking the covers off. So it's like really nice to experience that process.
Yeah, and it was a pleasure to have you as a student, because you learnt loads, and he's really talented. I'm just going to say that for the record.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try to take in the compliments. Sometimes it flows past, but I do take it. So do you do any teaching now?
I teach yoga. No.
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
so
not
we would like... Steph maybe less so, me maybe more so. I keep playing with the idea of bringing the courses back.
Yeah.
Because it was great to have, like, I think you really start to engage with your own knowledge when you teach a course. And people's enthusiasm is infectious, right? So even depending, no matter what, right? There was 3 of you.
Yeah.
And each person was doing their own thing, and each person took away their own experience. But the end product for all 3 of you was beautiful. Like, you all did really good jobs. And it's really humbling as a teacher to facilitate that experience for someone, because taking away something that you finished, as you already know because you're a woodwork specialist, when you finish something and you have a thing, I think it like flies in the face of modern life a little bit, right? Where everything's quite finite, and then you let it go and you move on to the next thing, whereas you get to keep that corn dog for as long as you want to keep it, right?
Trying to find
Family
a spot.
heirloom.
It's so heavy. So giant paperweights.
So yeah, I would really like to run another one. I mean, it's funny, since we did that course, we've had a lot of inquiries. Again, coming back to the whole space thing and this bloody poll. It's hard to fit the right amount of people in here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like, you gotta get the right number of people in to make that time worthwhile, right?
For sure, yeah.
And we were dry running it with you guys, so 3 people was perfect. We didn't need to make any money out of it. I'm also a sucker for doing something just because I enjoy it. So past a certain point, I was like, oh yeah, shit, we should be making some money. Whoops.
Yeah. It takes a lot of your
it's-
time. It's not really something you just let people get on with, because sometimes I'm like standing there, I'm like, I don't know what to do next.
100%.
Like, I've got no concept of like all the stages in that way. So
Because it's really technical, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think also the idea was that potentially Steph could choose to teach or choose to do the upholstery work that we have in the workshop. And you didn't really get a chance to do that because there was no room to do that around everything that lives in here. And
it was like you guys were doing projects at the same time.
yeah,
It's like a
so
lot.
you both will testify that right now there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. But also part of that me when I was doing something and watching you, Steph, like do kind of similar, and you're like, oh, that's kind of how I do it, rather than me looking at someone else that's on the course and thinking, are they doing it right? And they're looking at me thinking, am I doing it right? And then we're just kind of like looking at you doing like the final thing, which is quite, I guess I've done quite a lot of courses. I did a picture framing course recently, and that was like just not good. Like, they just had one kind of moulding that you could use for the frame, and you're basically just watching a guy do like gold leafing on something, which I'm not. I guess it is useful to learn, because like going back in the tradition of doing it, but I'm like, this is not what I want to do. I want just a really simple frame and using all the different tools and those kind of things. But yeah, just watching someone, I just don't learn from that. I got to do it myself.
100%.
Or I watch it and then have a go myself.
But it's that trickle-down effect, right, of information. It's like, I think both of us now, honestly, I ask Steph half the time what I'm meant to be doing as well. Like I do with our big machine. We've got so many technical bits of equipment here, and like she, honestly, as the head upholsterer is what I would call you. When the brigade was bigger, you were in charge of them. Steph took on the whole gauntlet of the business when I went on my maternity leave.
Yeah,
you did an amazing job. She's super technically proficient, so when I get lost, I'm like, "Oh, Steph, I forget which way's the needle go."
Yeah.
And you know, we're both equally able, which is actually then when you're problem solving stuff, it's a really nice thing to be able to layer the knowledge, right? You bring it together and you actually come up with some really interesting solutions.
Yeah.
Which is a great way. So going back to what you were saying, it makes more sense when you get students in for them to watch someone who is an expert work.
Yeah.
Because the trickle-down effect
like
of information.
Kind of
Totally. You're shadowing in a sort of way, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah, so we're thinking about maybe, I keep weeing you and me. I'm thinking about maybe a Saturday so that Steph has some room to work and doesn't have to do it if she doesn't want to. Just like a 10 to 1 sort of 6 afternoons or 6 mornings, Saturdays, because then the space can be clear and people can come in.
Yeah.
But taking on the information that you've just said, maybe it's better when Steph is here.
Yeah,
because
I guess it depends on the kind of
Yeah.
person, like the learner in that way.
It's just hard, isn't it? Because I think to a certain extent you do need to have a sort of slightly homogenized piece that people can work on, be it a stool or something, so that you can get down the information that they need. Whereas with your
we all did 3 different things.
Oh, yeah.
So
And
that
it
you
was-
can't really look at the person next to you and go, "Oh, we're at the same stage of doing like a box lid or whatever it was."
Exactly.
Then you're like, "Oh, they're at that stage."
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like,
Well, also because you did something that was like a completely new thing, right? I'd never seen one, so we needed
probably won't see
to.
one again.
Well, I think you should make some more, Pete. I think it was
if
great.
it was a bit smaller, it would be perfect. If it was a bit smaller,
There you
I just
go.
didn't,
But that's what a prototype is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you
Yeah.
effectively were doing.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were prototyping a cool thing. And like the nice part about your piece was that the cushion really looked like it had just been thrown over. Even though there was so much technical sewing involved,
Yeah.
and I don't think you quite realised that you brought in a giant sewing project.
No. The stapler. Yeah, if there was more stapling, it would have been easy. Be banging staples in.
Yeah, hundreds at a time.
Using hundreds at a time.
You know, whereas like Dan made a box, it's easier to actually make a box than it is to do what you were doing because the stages are just set. That's how you do it. There's like a point 1 to a point 10 kind of thing. Whereas who knows what a corn dog's meant to look like and what kind of stitching you wanted to finish with and stuff. So yeah, it's fun, but equally it depends on how you kind of rein everybody in so that they can learn in an effective manner.
Like in a balance as well. Yeah, like you're saying about, I think like we had 3 people and that was like that to me felt like a perfect amount because you had enough time from like you guys asking questions, but if like in a financial sense probably doesn't make sense. Like you need 6, 9 or 12 people.
I mean 6 would cover it, but then
But then finding the 12 people to pay like a premium, I guess, for a course is
thing,
really
right?
reducing the numbers of people,
which is probably
in that
where
way.
then fear comes into place where you're like, I'm not going to do it because it seems like a lot.
Yeah.
And then on those days where I'm feeling peppy, I'm like, Steph, we're doing this thing.
But you're a great teacher, so I think
Thank you. I
should
take
do
that.
it. You inspired so many upholsterers, Ayesha, that are
I
now.
don't know. I'm just like,
Out
come on,
in the world.
guys.
Yeah. Because was there a period when you had more people working?
Yeah. So at one point,
it's like 4 or 5 of you.
at one
like
point there
coming
was
in
6
different-
of us
Yeah.
all together at any one point. So if you take Jane as well, who was
Yeah.
taking stuff home, so the space accommodated when we were in the biggest of our studios, there was 5 of us. Yeah. And then Jane taking on freelancing.
Because I met her through, I think I messaged you about some
Yeah.
bench seats like a couple of years ago, and then you were really busy, so you passed on her information. So she worked on a few projects, and she had learned from you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's then businesses change, don't they? Like we had a situation with a client who, rightly so, was just doing really well with his manufacturing stuff, and we just couldn't accommodate the numbers he wanted to make.
Yeah.
And so he took his business to a factory, effectively, rather than, I would call us like an artisanal workshop. And that unfortunately, and this is its own business thing, we didn't have a contract.
Yeah.
Which meant he could pull that plug fairly quickly, which meant everything, a bit like a house of cards, came down from the base layer. So really, unfortunately, I had to let a lot of people go at that point, which honestly was probably one of the darker moments that this business has experienced. Because the thing is, when you work so closely with people, like Steph and I do spend more time with you than I spend with anyone else, Steph, unfortunately for you.
Same with me, Ayesha.
Just both leave and be like,
Yeah, it's human.
back tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, where you work, right? So we all were also like, I think, friends.
Yeah.
And so it was really like sad,
Yeah.
actually, because it's not just letting go of people. It's like having to, as the business owner, I felt like I was letting my friends down.
Yeah, and like taking that decision.
Yeah, but
hard.
you know, money is money, and like when you can't, which is again why we then travelled from there into this smaller space, which was more affordable, and kind of then spent the next 6 months shoring up the hatches to try and create a bigger client portfolio and stabilize the work that we were doing. And yeah, hats off again one more time to Steph, because she's just like the backbone of this. She just kept the work flowing so that I had time to look for the clients. And actually that's what's been amazing about there just being the two of us. You know, you can rely on the other person. Although I do feel like she's here a lot more than me. Which is true.
Because you have quite a few people involved in like behind us now is like some armchairs. You have like the people that make the frame. We have the designer. I guess at the beginning. They're at the beginning. Yeah. Designer, the person that makes like the frame.
Yep.
And then is it you, or is there anyone else kind of in that?
So,
there's quite a lot of people involved. In Obviously the
fabric,
the sheep.
Yeah.
They're involved at some point in the year. Yeah.
People who make
The
spring
sheeps.
units.
Yeah.
For some.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people like coming together to make. Yeah. There's like one kind of armchair.
So I'd say that, would you agree, Steph, the process is probably designer, then us, because we have to figure out how to take their visual, work it backwards to the frame, then to the frame, then back to us to double check that everything is okay. Then, as Steph said, onto the spring unit person to make sure that the internal suspension stuff fits. The designer then liaises with whatever the fabric house is. We tend not to get involved in that, depending on what their taste is. But then when it comes, it's back to us to check everything and make sure and it's in the quality that it's meant to be. Then we build, then it goes back to the designer to quality control it before it goes on to the customer. So it's like a weird hopscotch it plays.
A lot back and forth.
Yeah, where we're basically the like central hub, kind of.
Yeah, you're involved in like nearly every part of the process in that way.
But do you think we're designers or engineers, Steph?
I'd say it depends on who the client is. Because very much you'll just get an image and then that's how we want to look, but you don't know measurements, you don't know how soft or hard they want it to be, we don't know actually what goes into making that image appear as it does once we've like done our work.
Because I guess I've been like, you've asked me, I guess even when I saw like the course, just going back a bit, like looking at the course, like, oh, maybe that'll be like an interesting way to like meet different people and like learn about this process. So since then I've like fabricated some stool tops and some stool bases and not any chairs, but those kind of things.
Pete's a really good frame maker.
And what am I trying to say?
But it's the process.
But yeah,
right?
understanding that process, because for me, in my work, I start from the beginning. Someone says they want a sideboard, and then I figure it out. But you're getting me go, or someone going, here's a plan for a chair, and like reverse engineering that. So yeah, we've been trying to figure out stool bases, I quite enjoy that reverse engineering process, but it's quite frustrating if the designer doesn't really understand how it's made. So going back to the course, me coming on the course and then seeing, the foam goes there. Now I need to reduce the frame and reduce everything kind of down a bit. It's really useful. So you just need to get all the designers in, give them a crash course on how it all works,
I wish.
then send them back out there.
The issue is, like, exactly as you said, what goes inside is like a skeleton, right?
Yeah.
Like, if our skeletons were the same size as our outside person would be, like, at least
Sorry, not-
50% bigger, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what people don't get. Like,
Yeah.
they give us a finished thing, but then they're like, oh, that frame looks too small, or why is it like this, or what is this? And it's up to us to... And I think a big hole within... That is, like, unknown knowledge is... what frames look like the actual, and I wish, like, that's something that I really wish I knew how to do, which is why working with you, Pete, is like, I think you make beautiful frames because structural knowledge, you know, like knowing how things move and how things can be cut and the kind of supporting weight in different structures. That's why bringing together someone with soft skills and someone with hard skills in terms of literally materials can create really beautiful product.
Yeah.
Because I think if a designer did it separately, it would just end up wrong. So, like, even take these chairs that are behind us, for example.
Yeah.
This person doesn't design anything. They find old frames.
Okay.
They take the old frames to new frame makers.
Yeah.
And they go, can you replicate this?
Okay.
Then they bring us the original.
Yeah.
Stripped down with very, very basic traditional upholstery in it, usually because they're from the 1940s, and we sit there and we measure the hell out of it. We then figure out what would have been on it, and then we talk to the frame maker to say, you know,
so
they
then
want
you get something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then they want to modernize it in some way because they don't want to pay you to do hand springing, they don't want to pay you to do hand
stuffing.
exactly,
Yeah.
stitching or whatever. Then you end up changing the parameters and you work forward. So it's a really, like, brain teasing experiment, and it is reverse engineering.
Yeah, going backwards
definitely.
and
Yeah.
going forwards and then going backwards again. Yeah.
Which is very interesting in a lot of ways. But if you get it wrong, it's a bit like, what do they say? There's like a whole concept in design where, like, if you don't get the curve right to start with, the whole curve changes, right? By the end of it, if your radius was wrong at the beginning,
Yeah.
you might
It's
have...
like a cumulative
There you go,
error.
that's the word.
Yeah, kind of thing.
A cumulative error, nice.
That was in the brain. Yeah.
Wait.
If the curve and then it just will start to go around here like a spring kind of thing.
Yeah.
If it's not correct.
And it'll never come back to the same place because
Yeah.
you started in the wrong area
Yeah.
to start with, right? And the whole thing is that we make things that are meant to be comfortable.
Yeah. And be in some ways repeatable as well.
Yeah.
So you need to, like, document that whole process of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even with the stool bases that we've made, I'm like looking back on like what's that measure is like, did I do this? I'm like, right, I need to do a drawing of this so that we know every time, like, round the edges or don't round the edges.
And I need to also do that.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's funny because we've got, like, there's some of the chairs that we do. Got almost like a Bible.
Yeah.
This has got
Wow.
everything in it, like each stage, each step. So, like, knowing that, okay, on here, the top fabric seam is at 40 centimetres. And, like, everything is just
Yeah.
detailed.
Because after you've done one takes as long as doing 5, and then the next ones take shorter and shorter time.
But also,
and then you're just kind of processing.
there's 2 of us. Well, there was 5. And if you're trying to make something look like one person made it, but there's multiple people making one, especially when big orders come in and there might be like 4 chairs and we're sharing them.
Yeah.
How do you make everyone do the same thing? Because so then, we need the uniformity, and this is just easier. Like having a Bible is easy. I mean, Steph has added. So I wrote this, but then Steph's added all the notes, so now I use hers.
Crossing things out.
But that's it, right? Again, it's the sharing of information
Like iterations
to make
of it as well. Yeah.
to make something better, basically.
So would you like to get involved in the? I don't know if you were saying about getting involved in the frame making process, or you.
I would love to learn how to frame make, but I think it's almost starting from square one again.
It's like another workshop. It's like I would like to do metalworking. Can't really do that. You could do woodworking in here, but then everything would be covered in sawdust because this is like, I say proper wood. You're using like big chunks of wood. It's not it's like flat panels of like plywood and those kind of things.
But equally, it's taken the guys who make these. So these are made down. These chairs that we're looking at behind us are made in a workshop down in Brighton, and they specialise in prototyping. But when I was speaking to Patricia, who is sort of the head of operations for them, their actual like prototyper is a man in his late 60s. And he comes in once a week, and he's the person who creates the original.
Yeah.
Then once you have the templates, anybody else can start to put them together. But he is the skilled human, right? He's the brain.
See you on Friday. I'll be back next week.
Literally. And like the thing that he does is he figures out, because he's seen it, right? Like that's the whole thing. It's about the experience of what you know, and your knowledge base grows because you've learnt with your hands. So it's the same thing. Like I would love to learn, but would I ever say that by the time I wanted to retire, please let me retire at some point, I was technically proficient enough to do a chair from frame all the way? Probably not. Simply because the layers of expertise that's needed to get to a point where you know that you're making things well, it's just such different skill sets, right?
Yeah. The other day we were kind of talking about doing like personal projects. And obviously you do a lot of stuff like with the designers, like these kind of chairs. I think you were doing these when I came like last year. How do you find that balance between the work kind of coming in from designers and I guess like residential people and then commercial people, kind of doing an angle thing, and then like your own stuff? Like we were just talking about how it's like a real struggle to be like, okay, next week there's not too much going on, I'm gonna do again like behind us like the stool bases or something like that. How do you find that struggle?
Impossible.
Yeah. It is a struggle. Yeah.
The struggle is real.
Yeah.
Steph, have I ever managed to do some of my own stuff?
Because I guess in theory with two people, if I was two people, I'd be like, right, you do this thing, and then you go and do the artistry and the fun stuff. I know in reality that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But unless, it's kind of tricky.
You've got a few projects on the go.
I mean, that's
A
just
lot of
being
work in
nice
progress.
to me, aren't you? Like, you're just being kind at this moment. I think I'm just going to iterate. Steph says projects on the go. What she means is frames that Pete's made that we're looking at that don't have anything on top of them, and one upholstered frame that still needs work that we call, what have we called it? The mochi.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. Like, I would love to launch something that Steph and I could bite our teeth into that was our own design. There's a lot of fear around it, fear of failure, fear of people saying they don't like it. You also have to bite off a lot of risk because you have to sink money into it. And as a small business, that's quite a scary place to be.
Yeah.
Especially considering we were coming back from quite a tight financial situation last year. I would like to, but there's a big part of my brain that finds it daunting. And Steph is the eternal optimist. So you're always just like, go do it. Come on, we can do it. Let me know what you need. And I'm always like, I don't know. So maybe what I should do is I'll do the work and Steph should do it.
Then you get to take all the credit, so that's perfect for you.
What do you think?
I think they're your ideas, Ayesha. I'm happy to help you.
Do you do anything on the side in that way?
I'm
To
like
flip it round?
Ayesha in that sense. I've got these ideas because I've got
It's
ideas
got
of
to come together and then there'll be a middle ground.
I want a little not bedside table, like a side table that I've been meaning to write up the dimensions to give you Pete.
Figure it out.
But I've yet to do it. It's the doing it that's the tough bit.
But this is what we were talking about,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's a certain element of, like, it's in your mind and it's an interesting creative process and you like stick so much hope in that moment that I guess for me, in quite a like philosophical manner, the hope feels a bit scary. So if you just turn around and ignore it and get on with what you know, that feels more stable. And there are so many layers. Like, it's not just about creating a product, right? Like, you then have to market the product and get it to the right people.
I
and
heard there is
sell
someone
it
here that does marketing, possibly.
I've heard someone does marketing too.
And then I've also
I
heard
studied
someone
that,
here
yeah.
that did website design and graphic design in the past. So there's that as well.
Thanks, Pete.
It's almost like you've got the perfect
I mean, when you put it that way, yeah, I don't know. I'm just lazy and I procrastinate. What can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite nice, like having the idea of like, I'd like to do this, and then you'll revisit the idea like in a month or two later, and you're like, actually, I'll change it. I'm glad that I didn't make it.
Yeah.
Because actually, I'd like it to function.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
Like
doing with your
this.
side table?
Yeah.
But I guess a lot of that's like in your head, like the evolution
Yeah.
is in your head, and then you're like shutting it down, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you did. I'm saying this
Put
as
it-
someone doesn't
Oh,
do it.
pen
Also,
to
I'm
paper.
not trying to preach.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
no. I
Well,
mean,
I am
I've seen some
preaching.
of your design and it's beautiful,
Yeah.
but it's similar, isn't it? It's like that thing of, well, I can't speak on your behalf or on your behalf, but iterations are things where, I mean, it's amazing. I think the thing I've learned about designers is everyone prototypes on someone else's buck. So that's why rendering is so important.
Yeah.
Because people make a picture and they sell it to someone and then they suddenly have the funds to be able to do it. And it kind of takes that risk element out of it. But as a human, I can't do that without knowing that I like the thing. Do you know what I mean? Like we're tactile people. We make things in
As
real
in just
life.
doing like a 3D draw, or even that's a sketch, but they're not
Yeah.
actually making the real.
Exactly. Like
Real
I need
life
to know what
version.
it feels like
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
it functions and is it the right size and scale and things.
Is it heavy enough? Is it like all
Yeah.
those sorts of things that until it's actually a physical piece, you can't really decide, actually, I'd change this, or...
Yeah, and just kind of setting that time aside to do that is very hard.
But
Because it's not like an afternoon on a Friday once a week. It's like, right, I need to do 2 weeks on this, like solid, and like try things. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Try this. It's not going to work. Take it apart. Put it back together again.
But I also do have that time. Like I do. It's like I'm not going to say that I am a busy human. We are busy humans, but Steph said many times, like, let me know if I can do anything to help. And I'm like, sure. And then I tell you what, I probably just need to delegate some time. Like I think that's probably what it is. Because I bought a website name and I was like, done, tick.
Yeah.
It'll make itself.
Yeah.
And that's never how it works.
No, but
And
that's a good tick done.
it's true, but
It's
you
a
know,
step,
you can't
yeah.
just have
Yeah.
one empty website hanging in the
That no one
ether.
knows about.
Yeah,
Right.
totally. Like it's so many other layers. And like the interesting part is we work with a lot of people who wanted to help us, right? Like Mark came in and gave us really good advice. I mean, he's very talented, ops and logistics and marketing. And it made it seem so doable. And it's almost like remembering that it's a bit like going all the way back to what you said about the stages, right? If you're floundering around with people who don't know what the stages are,
Yeah.
then it's really hard. But maybe actually getting someone who has a bit more acumen in that way to just lead the process a bit and be like, right, well, you make the thing, you take the
Yeah.
pictures,
Yeah.
you
Like a
break it down.
big old to-do list. kind of
yeah,
thing.
and just break it down into doable sections that you sort of go, right, I'm going to give myself 2 months
Yeah.
and I'm just going to tick it off for X launch day. And then you do it for that, makes it less of this like,
Yeah.
I'm cloud.
And then the orders just come flooding in, so it'd be fine then.
But that's the hope thing.
It's refreshing going, is this on? Is this working?
Am I doing
Hello?
it?
Has anyone seen it?
Maybe the email's broken.
Yeah. How do people like find you? Do you ask that question? That's the first question I ask a lot of the time. It's like, how do you find me?
Yeah.
They're like, maybe on Instagram and those kind of things.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
I think when we've been around long enough, word of mouth becomes the big thing. Also, this lady at the Chair Collective, Caroline. If you're out there, Caroline.
She's hyping you up constantly.
Yeah,
Oh,
literally.
wow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like I think at least 3 times a week I get an email from someone saying Caroline from the Chair Collective
So what's
said
the Chair Collective?
they are another upholstery school.
Okay.
And Upholsterers based down in Bristol. And I don't know if that's an Instagram thing. I can't think that I've actually met her. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge. And then just being around long enough, people know you. And if you're stabilised in a particular area, people get to know you. So
Yeah.
kind of South London-wise,
Yeah.
we facilitate a lot of upholstery for the surrounding area. And that's been really useful. I think Instagram, not so much.
Yeah.
But I think, Pete, you're probably slightly more savvy at Instagram than I am.
Yeah.
I should use my marketing guru.
Who's terrible
Just start
at
doing
Instagram,
TikToks or
yeah.
something.
Great idea. Great.
How do you feel about like that? Do you enjoy like documenting the process, like
Yeah.
and outputting it in that way, like on Instagram or on like your website, or is it not an enjoyable part of it?
I like it. Steph's always my model and I'm always behind the camera, so I find that much easier. Yeah, and we've actually started to get a little thing down where like I think it's really important for things to feel sleek on Instagram. I try not to put too much.
But I guess that's a barrier if you like. So I'm like, right, it needs not everything needs to look polished in that kind of way, but I'm like, I have a certain standard.
Yeah.
Because I did photography and I
Yeah.
do all that. So you're like, well, I can't just take it in this way. It's got So then it's kind of a stumbling block in some ways.
I guess I don't have a background
have
in
that.
photography, but
yeah.
I have a background in design. So
Yeah.
I do
It,
want
like, feeds
things
into
to
it,
feed in a like. So usually what happens is when we finish something that Steph and I are both particularly proud of, we'll take it outside because there's a really cool set of blue double doors.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Steph and I pretty much wear the same thing every day. That's kind of useful.
Timeless. It's
Yeah,
timeless
yeah. So
look.
you never know when we made it. We do a clear shot of Steph prepping the piece, so cleaning it off, giving it a whatever it is, a zhuzh, yes, technical term, and then I'll do a walk around of the object.
Yeah.
And that tends to be our final piece, and people seem to like that.
Yeah.
Like we get a lot of good feedback from that, and a lot of people who seem to respond to that. Actually, what's funny is anytime I put up videos of us making things that have both of us in it, just going about our everyday life, people love that.
Yeah.
I think this is so removed from what everyone does in their everyday experience.
Yeah.
Like you said, your friends.
Yeah, my friends love it. They're like, oh, I saw what was going on in your workshop. Like, because they're just used to being in like offices and like, they're like, wow, you make things from start to finish and you can see it go out the door.
Yeah.
Like,
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, seeing that. Yeah, I really like that. Just seeing it's a part of the fabric, and then it is a chair that someone can kind of use. Do you get to see a lot of the things in their finished space, or you're a little bit removed from that kind of process, which is a shame?
Now we are. We didn't used to be. We used to do a lot more delivery and things.
Yeah,
So basically the business, I think you asked this question a bit ago, but we didn't respond.
Yeah.
Now I'd say probably 75% of what we do is for commercial clients. So be it a designer, interior designer, architect, something like that. And the rest is domestic. We tend not to take on that much domestic because honestly, the process is so much longer because with them, it's great, but you are trying to source fabrics for people. You're trying to figure out what their taste is.
Yeah.
Fabric sampling takes a really long time because there is a world of fabric out there. And when you're really trying to find the right thing for the right person, it's an experience, right? You don't want to throw it away and just say, well, this is all there is, because that's never the case. So I tend to try and find residential things of pieces that are heirloom. So people really love them, like the Hans Wegner ones that came through. And Steph did a beautiful job on them. But those were a sort of his and hers set of chairs. They call them ladies and gentlemen's chairs. And we restored the wood. They had a new lease of life on the cushions. They had the client worked within set design, so he knew what he wanted fabric wise. Really beautiful fabric turned up, and that was a really special piece. More and more often nowadays people are asking for the woodwork to be done as well, which is a really nice, like we can finish woodwork, we can't make woodwork, but finishing woodwork is a really lovely experience.
I guess that's people like inheriting those things, like first generation inherited, like their parents bought it and now they're getting it, but they're able to afford to get it kind of done in that way.
Totally. And they love them, right? Because there's more than just a comfortable seated sentiment.
Yeah.
And there's something really special in that. Like when you see someone who's like, oh, you had the set of stripy chairs that you did and the client was pregnant and her parents had given her the chairs.
Phoebe. Yeah, my friend Phoebe.
Phoebe! Yeah. And like it was such a nice experience to work with her because there was so much love around those objects, you know?
Yeah. Which is
Thanks
great.
for that, by the way.
That's all right. I'm doing a project for them, her and Alex at the moment. Yeah. So no, Alex, I went to uni with him.
Cool.
So
But
maybe,
yeah,
maybe he'll listen. Maybe he won't. Maybe he won't get this far in.
Thank you, Phoebe. I hope you're well. But Steph did a great job, but it was really nice because her dad and mum came to pick up the chairs and drop them off, and they were really surprised by the process. And they were like, oh, I didn't think you'd use the piping on the outside edge, and now that looks really good, you know. And that's the enthusiasm that you get working with actual people, not just designers, which is I miss. But designers pay you better.
I was going to say, it's very hard to communicate all the processes to someone that has their grandparents' chair, and they think it's going to be a few £100 to get it recovered, and you're like, that's the cost of the fabric, let alone all the other materials and the time and finding the fabric. And
that is actually just going back to the social media thing. I don't know if you'd agree or not, Steph, but this whole like, here's the frame, and then someone snaps their fingers and there's like a I honestly, the process is so long. And it almost cheapens it slightly, not in a bad way, but in a sense of people don't understand. What so like you said, they just expect it to be less labor intensive. And then when you give them a price, I think that's my bugbear. I don't know if you'd agree as well. Someone asks you how much something is, you send them a quote back, which is time and effort, and you just never hear anything. And I'm always just like, well, at least feedback. It could just be
just anything.
Like when would you ever just ask someone a question and they say something,
just walk off,
and you just turn around and walk away, right? Like,
just not even a shrug of the shoulders.
Just an absolute ghost.
Like this, I've really been trying, like this week, I had like a couple of inquiries, is just to write stuff down. Like, I only use this material, I only do it in this way, I don't do a painted finish kind of thing, don't use MDF, and just try. I mean, I sent that to someone, maybe they'll listen. Sent that to someone, they didn't reply, but maybe still time, there's still got time. But rather than going and visiting people, and that takes an hour to get there, an hour to get back, and then probably 3 hours of doing a drawing, sending a quote. It's like a day for nothing.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a person who emailed me, and they had asked about a bunch of furniture that they had, and they lived in West London, right? We're in southeast London, so that's literally an hour and a half's drive. And they had said, what does the process look like? When can you come and measure? How do we discuss things? Now, I know back in the day, and what I mean by that is around 2011.
It was black and white back then.
I would have done it. I would have gone and seen them straight away. And yes, the prices were probably cheaper then, but I also wasn't actually particularly business savvy then. So what I explained to this person was that I give an estimated cost, and it is an estimate. If they like the estimate and can work around it, then I can come on site. Because it's better to see the furniture and shore up what needs to happen. At that point, the estimate could change if I notice in real life that other work needs to be done. The estimate does not include fabric. The estimate does not include pickup or delivery. The estimate does not include rebuilding things if we open it up and there is damage on the inside that you can't see. Never heard anything.
No.
And it's like, well, because people kind of expect, it's like if you got, I don't know, a plumber or someone to come around, they'd probably come around, be there for half an hour, give you a quote, but the work is always anticipated as being of worth. Whereas because so many people don't understand what we do, the work is never really anticipated as being of that kind of worth, because unfortunately things like made.com existed. They don't exist anymore. And people can buy stuff super, super cheap. You know? And so why would they spend £800-900 on having an armchair redone?
It's hard to communicate that. But there is probably a way for you to communicate and for me to communicate it. Because going, like you're saying, years ago you would have gone and just met that person just because they're like, I'm interested. This is me saying this. I'm interested in you. We want your work. And you're like, someone likes me. And then you go and do it, and then you leave and you're like, well, they don't want anything to do with what I do anyway, so it's an absolute waste of time.
Or on the other side, I think you've had this experience recently, Steph, where you were doing your friends' chairs. Not bad, but you feel bad because when you're trying to get your foot in, you're like, oh, I'll do it. And you cheapen your own time because you're not charging something. And then
Yeah.
Then you spend more time, then you're like, oh no, I've spent my weekends
My
and not
hourly
charged
rate
this,
is like £2.50.
much,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's,
Yeah. It's hard.
it's the satisfaction. At least you know that they're going to be loved and valued.
Yeah.
But
Have you got a favourite project that you've each worked on?
I do
You
always.
could say one that you absolutely hate as well. But
One I
what's been your
always
favourites?
love is actually one that I did in my third year at college, and Abby has it. It was an iron back frame, and that was just like whole new techniques and learning. So I do always look back at that, and I'm proud of what I achieved in making that. But then there's so many projects that we've had in this workshop as well that like everything, I'll learn something from.
Yeah. Nice.
What did you love
Proud
about
of.
the iron back?
Just the sewing process.
What
And,
about
like,
the sewing?
Explain
about what that's like, Steph.
There's so much sewing involved. Because on a wooden frame, you can staple into it. On an iron back frame, there is nowhere that the staples can go. So every layer that you use to create the inside back of and the outside back of a chair has to be hand sewn. So it is quite a laborious task because each stitch needs to hold tension, and if you want to achieve a certain look, like you've got to figure out how it's going to be affixed. So yeah, my hands by the end of it didn't like me, but I like the overall look.
Yeah. Nice. What about you? The favourite one?
The swivel stool that you... I think that's just...
Oh yeah, that's
it's just so
fun.
cool. It's so... I love opulent things in the sense of my house doesn't look like that, but it's a stool that moves, which it's nice to see movement in an object that otherwise a lot of people think of as static.
Yeah.
Using... So Maddox Creative, I love their work. I think they're just so... interesting as designers, and they've paired up with Samuel and Sons, who create trims, Patissiamo, and together they've created this range which is just beautiful. But beyond the range, trying to figure out how it was engineered together and just those like little bits of change through the prototype, and then watching the mechanism come together and finishing each layer, and the final piece feels very elegant and very simple, and it's just not.
Yeah.
And I think I always feel like I've, sounds super pig-headed, but nailed it if something feels simple and it's incredibly complex. And that, to me, is the mark of good design, and that's the point where I'm like, yeah, it felt very satisfying.
Yeah.
We had a sofa bed in recently for another designer, and such a love-hate relationship with it because so many layers of intricacy, and I really enjoyed the process, and I love the final thing, and I would love to own one, and I really disliked the process because of how simple and clean-lined it needed to be, right? When you add fuss to things, sometimes you can hide behind the fuss.
Yeah.
But with both of those projects, the point was, one had a lot of trim, but it was simple in form, and the other one was so simple in form and flowing and undulating, but had so much complexity with what it did. So functional objects that do something else, I think is really cool. Like one which is a bed and one that moves.
Because the sofa bed, you kind of enclosed all of the mechanics in that way, so it's not like it looks great just from the outside, but you take the cushions off and it's just a standard sofa bed frame, like you'd covered all of that.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of upholstered on the inside,
Literally.
covered with fabric.
I mean, as much as you could possibly upholster onto it, we did. And like next level stuff, right?
Yeah.
You take the med mechanism out, there's a valance. Everything was hidden, but also everything was really considered. So it wasn't just there for frivolity, it was there because it was doing a thing, right? And that's cool to me. Like, it felt very... I guess that's it. Like, maybe one of the things I enjoy, maybe we're figuring out what the collection is now, but things that do things, like multifunctional object, not just that single. Like, I love the chairs that are behind us, but really they're a chair.
Yeah.
You know, they're the traditional sense of an armchair, whereas a sofa bed is a functional, practical piece that you can make super cool. The swivel stool, again, just a really interesting take on small space living, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Do you have many of the things that you made in your own homes or in places? No. Everything from made.com.
I've got, I think, 4 chairs in my room that I've made.
A lot of seating.
A lot.
Come on in.
I'm looking for a sofa. It's
And
more of
side
a chair
tables.
room
Just one
rather
for
than
like
a
sitting,
bedroom.
scrolling, one
You
for
made your
reading a book.
headboard?
Oh yeah, and I made my headboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, my room does have a lot of things that
Nice.
I've made in it.
That's good.
It's a pretty
Yeah.
room as well. Steph's a good designer. I have a chair that we made that's sitting in that racking that's not at my house because it's so expensive. I don't want my toddler to draw on it or hurt it. No, I have a wooden bed because upholstered beds I really don't like.
Yeah.
And I have a metal framed sofa because I love the idea of this sofa bed and I would love to make one, but a metal frame sofa is one that was the right height to allow it's functioning, the spaces, right? The things I have made a lot of for my own house are cushions.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of spare fabric. And one really long bolster because I love my bed, but the mattress didn't fit inside of the section because of the way that the wooden headboard is at a slant. So I needed something to wedge between
Fill the
that
gap.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does its purpose, and it's a piece I really like. But yeah, no, other than that, no.
No. Is there anything you would like to do? Everything. Or the sofa bed?
The sofa bed. I'd like to do the sofa bed. I'd like to make my curtains. Again, it's a tough call, isn't it? Because I have cats, so the curtains are just like no-go at the moment. Yeah, exactly.
Lord.
And I have a kid,
Yeah.
so I don't want to put the money in until she knows not to draw on stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd like a side table, but I have to design that
Design
and get Pete to make it. And then I would like as well to make myself a ottoman.
Nice. Cool.
speaking of ottoman, I have made myself an
Oh,
ottoman.
yeah?
It's just sat in the wood
Yeah,
form
is that the one
without
at the
any.
bottom?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Nice.
quite cool.
Cool. And maybe just like bringing it back to kind of wrap it up, like back to the space. Is there any, if you were to have like an ideal space in a dream world, what would it kind of look like and how would it function? I guess you would have a frame making section, you would have the sewing section, or yeah. What would it look like and where would it be? Location wise, anywhere. Unlimited budget.
I feel like yours would have a racetrack outside or be in the countryside for a run.
Nice. I'd have a yoga studio attached to my space, I think, just so I could go and do that. I think Steph's would be the most beautiful place. It would have
I don't know.
a whole fabric
Lot of
book
chairs.
section out of like, because she knows so much. I like remarkable knowledge for names in fabric. I think you would have a really beautiful seating section that would have a lot of beautiful fabric books that you could do selection space with. I think what we have right now actually works really well. Get rid of the bloody pole and the pink floor. Probably double it up so that we could have a bit more space to have nice racking for the frames that we've made. Maybe just because it's an ego
So you're not
thing.
having to move stuff to work. It's like,
You've got...
the finished things kind of can
Totally.
go somewhere and it's not.
If it could be a non-negotiable in terms of price, like price wasn't an object, I would probably say the footprint of the lower half of this building. So I think that's like about 3,000 square foot would be ideal. So that it would be really nice to actually, what I would love is to get people on board. So like Pete to move in with us.
Yeah.
And people who knew what they were doing so that it was a sense of community, because I think that something that happens in workshops is you can get quite lonely. So a space in which people can have space and you can all confer and work together.
Yeah.
Maybe a little room on the offshoot that can be a studio space for students. So you can train people up, but they could then rent a little bit of space, a little bit of desk space to do their things without it encroaching on the actual upholstery workshop space.
Yeah.
Yeah, a really nice section to be able to invite clients into that had fabric books and space for us to actually sit
Yeah.
and have lunch.
Not just on your lap on a stool.
Exactly. I mean, we make so much seating and we barely bloody sit down, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time it's stools that
Mm.
aren't very comfortable. What else?
Do you feel like you have a strong community around you? Because obviously where we are now, there's a lot of studios. It's like right in the middle of Peckham. There's a lot of, I guess, people in that building that have studios, but you don't. Because I don't feel I have like a really strong community. There's people I see in the hallway outside of my space, but I guess coming and doing these kind of chats hopefully builds on that in some way. Yeah.
I think we are building like we have Joe, who is in a traditional sense, a cabinet maker. We're trying to create that sense of like for like and interest.
Yeah.
But no, not in this corridor. I think we know people, like Steph and I are old hands
Say
in this space, right?
They're like, "Where's the mop?" You're like, "Down there."
Yeah, literally that. Like, and there are some people within this building, like Ajit and Abdullah and Mr. Shahrukh, who we see every day and everyone says hello to. But the way that it was when I first moved into this building, I miss that.
Why do you think that's changed? Just like cost.
People can't afford it. Yeah, we're lucky as a business to have managed to bring in enough to be able to keep affording a space. A lot of people closed because running your own business is really exhausting and keeping the finances level. There used to be a frame maker. He was really talented. He took a job is what I call it now.
A real job.
Yeah, well, as a frame maker, but he gets paid by something else.
Yeah.
There were people who did pinhole cameras. I don't know what they do now. One of them I retrained as an upholsterer, and she has a job as an upholsterer. There was a curtain maker. There was a costume designer. There were all sorts of people who we were definitely much more affiliated with and chatted to. And slowly it's all kind of changed. Stonemason, frame maker, kitchen cabinet makers, bike painters. Like I knew all of them.
Yeah.
And now it's
like
really
where
the last
wide range of people.
Yeah, and we're the last kind of standing of the makers within it.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, maybe we could just wrap it up there.
Absolutely.
That was great.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you,
for
Pete.
that.
Thank
That
you
was
for
good.
coming to visit us.
No worries. Thanks.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ayesha and Steph. I'll be sharing more behind the scenes of the projects I've worked with them over on Instagram, something I haven't shared yet, so keep an eye out over there. All the links to their Instagram or website will be in the description of this episode if you want to learn more. Catch you all on the next episode in the series. Over and out.